Hey everybody, this is Jason for the Alliance Project. Here to do part 3 of the Anunnaki Draco Orion Wars thing we were doing. So get right into it, kind of giving you a little background and some terminology the last 2 shows. This time I'll kind of just go right into the story and hopefully you guys can pick up where we left off. So we'd have to guess that Anu, Enki's dad, landed an Orion queen. He said Magdalene, from which he said, Thoth said his blue blood was from Rigel, essentially, and that Anu married Magdalene in the same sense, the historical sense, I guess, is what that came from. But what they meant was basically they were the heir to the royal bloodlines. All right, so he had an Orion queen. Anu had an Orion queen with he had a passion to. He loved her, and they had the winged genes, if you will, the bird genes, if you will. If Thoth is the son of Enki, if that's correct, what she says he is, their bloodline must have been the blue bloods from Rigel near Orion, and they were like basically they were like soul penetrating and ruthless characters, these Rigelians were. And it's reported from the time empaths at Montauk, and also with conversations with Michael Ash. He's a Montauk survivor. You guys can look those up for references. You guys always ask for them. If you look into the story of Dune as well, that's a good point to pick up on as like real physics and history. And that would apply to Enki's story. His ability to absorb intense pain would have predicted his genetic soul. Would he had. It's hard to explain, really, but he had the DNA that it was still implosive, all right? Still able to ensoul DNA. So you can look at it as on like a self-aware lightning bolt, like I was telling you. And basically its own tail kind of starts feeding itself, and then it becomes a ball of lightning. And that's how DNA gets a soul, essentially. All right. DNA, basically proteins absorb and spin in the new axis of symmetry, and eventually turn inside out on a magnetic scale. And that's how you ensoul DNA. You become like a self-feeding tornado, as I was trying to explain earlier. Enlil, Yahweh, Michael, the angry god, on the other hand, we'd have to assume he had a different mother by On, which was actually, all indications suggest that his bloodline was from a half-cyborg machine intelligence, probably already fallen DNA. In that case, Sitchin's interpretation on the Sumerian tablets basically says, for some reason, there was no possibility that Enlil could be taught how to ensoul DNA, only Enki. I propose the reason for that is it had to be the genetics of his mother, okay? Literally, the fallen DNA comes from Enlil's side, and they tried to hide that. They tried to cover that up and make it seem like the opposite. They wanted to hide the bloodline, hide the fallen DNA, so they could still rule over and instill this plan, because a majority of them did that. They had the idea that they would kind of merge transhumanism with technology, and they lost their ability to ensoul DNA and essentially do what we can do naturally. So you can pick up with Enki basically falling in love with his own genetic experiments and basically getting his own bloodline stuck on the planet. So the Anunnaki got desperate to keep gold powder mining operations, which they later called Titicaca and things like that, from bankruptcy. So they agreed to set the rebellious Enki free in the genetics lab to cook up some gold mining slaves, humans, Lulus. Sitchin interpreted the Sumerian reports, basically, of how miserable the Anunnaki were, not doing their own gold mining. So it basically, what it doesn't say though is how the Anunnaki got so desperate for the gold. Enki's ancestors, during the disastrous loss of their, passionate, they're basically their blissful, exciting way that they can basically soul DNA and, achieve bliss and become a self-aware, coherent aura. They, before it started decaying, all right, the temporary solution was discovered basically by mechanical means, and it was kind of addictive to them, I guess. Made it easier. But it was pretty effective at the time. And they found a mineral, gold, basically, which when you subjected it to this compressed charge, like we were talking about, it became soluble in the blood. And this gold powder is like a fractal atomic popcorn in the monoatomic state, on a single molecule level. It's like popcorn, it's really implosive and all the energy is transferred. The electrical result is kind of a forced catalyst of implosions and subatomic quantum levels in the blood and therefore in the DNA. So the triggering of this implosion in the DNA, but that's the goal we want to achieve, to become that self-aware and basically even be able to transcend death with your aura. Well, what Thoth was teaching us in the Emerald Tablets, basically. So, with the lack of those glandular fires of passion, to speed up the implosive gravity-making ensoulment in the DNA, the Nephilim, the fallen ones, however you want to say it, developed a serious addiction to eating gold powder. Basically, an addictive behavior in general delivers the source of the self-empowerment to the outside of yourself. All right. This was particularly true with them when it became, they called it manna or spice, but it was gold powder, and they were addicts of eating this, right? They would basically hear the ringing and they're speeding up DNA, approaching a greater electrical superconductivity. The body would spit out most of the diseases, and unfortunately, as Thoth and Enki's son was kind enough to narrate, the gold powder addiction and the absence of true empowering bliss is you lost like psychological hygiene, basically. It produces interesting fractation, a split in the personality. It's like succeeding and get thousands of more radio stations working in the tuner of your DNA, but failing to evolve the electrical force of the will, like your self-direction or your internal fire, or fire with a pH, like the pyramid, Pyramid literally means fire in the middle, fire in the center, fire amid. To be able to sort of tune out your own station and choose your own station. The result was an evolution of the Draco, Anunnaki, fallen Nephilim, in which they developed a machine, maintained its mechanical form of immortality, essentially by eating this gold, with complete loss of long memory and individualism and ensoulment of the DNA. They became a hive mind, essentially shut off, and since they were so connected with each other on the same radio station, essentially they could, there's no need for compassion, as I was telling you, and the DNA was loaded with telepathy, and it just lost individualism, it lost compassion and lost ensoulment. So that's what they meant by the fallen DNA. So this was the gold that the Anunnaki sought on Earth. Basically, in Dune, there was a lot of truth. Spice turned your eyes deep blue, made you live forever. In that book, if you floated in the spice gold, merging your blood with it, you could be taught to time travel, right? Sitchin reports that the Anunnaki needed gold to repair their electrical fabric of their home planets and bleeding atmosphere. Basically, it was bleeding and depleting every time it got near us. You look deep into that dilemma, we see that all the planets ultimately lose atmosphere if their symbiotic gravity making bubble gene pool resident loses skill to steer and keep the gravity bubble coherent using implosive emotions, essentially. The idea is it's on a grander scale, a lot bigger than what we picture it, but we're in touch with our planet and it's in touch with us. Just as the moon goes with menstruation of women, most women actually receive their period on, like, when they get their period or whatever, it's the same moon phase. Say it's a full moon, and then next month it'll be the full moon. It's the same thing, and then it's the opposite. Like say on a new moon they might be ovulating and whatever. We're much connected into this grid a lot deeper than we realize. In other words, like when the gold aligned with the fractal nodes, the planet and the gravity grid can reattract gravity coherence and therefore atmosphere. This is like a superficial description, but gold occurred in the fractal nodes, like the cross points of the mineral veins in the structures of Earth, much more than it did in other planets, precisely because Earth's magnetic structure embedded more fractality in it, basically. Enki recommends that you ask why current Earth physics found the liquid iron molten core of the Earth to be jitterbugging in a low-frequency sonic standing wave that gave it a dodecahedral shape. Then notice the 60-degree cascade cone, like it's a fractal shape aligned with our solar system in the Pleiades and the Orions and the Sirius systems. It's essentially all a fractal cone. It's like a connection, a much larger connection. These alignments of the constellations and everything, these stars and the ability to kind of steer stars is on a much higher level of understanding than what we can really get together, but it has to do with a collective, all right? And gravity and all these things, they can actually create gravity. So if you think about that, if something's creating gravity, then it could, or depleting, then it could definitely change the way things are. Because basically it's our real estate is designed to be a place where you can raise DNA to the point of star embedding, So this answers the question posed by a lot of people. If you ask me about the parallels with the Bible and the fallen DNA and the Son of our Savior, things like that, the only way to salvation is through the Son, things like that. You look at the most ancient language and artifact that we ever found with a pyramid on it. It was literally a pyramid with all-seeing eye, and on the bottom it said, from the Son of the Creator he comes, something like that, but it's literally the Illuminati symbol. And I'll show you that. Maybe I'll pop that up at the end of the conversation here. But basically our galactic sector is so far from like downtown that the conveniences of like a true galactic civilization to require to make like a gene pool with intense survivalistic qualities here is kind of like it's a good thing. It's a good prime real estate, we'll say. And like, it's rare that gene pools propagate so quickly, all right, among remote planets like this. The possibility of reinsouling the lost or fallen Enlil ancestry or the Nephilim DNA to the Anunnaki existed here precisely because of the combination of the wedding of the half-brother Enki to the ensouled winged dragon, East of Eden, two brothers, etc., whatever you want to look at it as. And they exquisitely designed the fractal magnetic real estate like Earth could take basically gene pools like the Anunnaki and reassemble them into a soul group that embeds enough to relaunch them into a star inhabiting gravity, making phase conjugate coherent self-aware aura. Basically, they were trying to be able to do this again. Their DNA had a problem. They took the lazy way, and that half of it needed repaired. Okay, and we were their means of repairing themselves. As I said, they were addicted to eating the gold, and that's what caused the problem in the first place, I believe. You start using the technologies and things like that, and you make them so synthesized like the slaves and all these humble workers that do all the work. That's probably part of the lesson is you don't make things so easy. But yeah, like when you basically they map like magnetic lines between stars like we would like the ley lines on Earth, or possibly just like a grid system or a highway system. That's the same thing they do, right? When Enki came out of the genetics lab with his second wave like of Lulus, and Lil got really jealous, and Enki had meantime fallen in love with females of his own genetic creations, and Enlil's jealousy over his brother's success with the slave humans caused interesting politics, to say the least, which led the royal family of the Jews and the Genesis Grail of Kings of Gardner, basically, to split. The Orion Queen Mags were called the Asaru, and Asa Uru literally means queen of the snake or dragon, and the Sa and the S sound is just like you're trying to spit or slither. It meant power among the Dracos, basically. The word S means power or multiplication or plurality in most Earth languages as a result. So kind of like Superman, what they were saying. And there's a lot of parallels in Superman. The red glowing eyes. When they came to this sun, the sun gave them superpowers because it was much more charged than their red sun. And essentially they became godlike and indestructible. The same idea that was of Superman, but there's a lot of occult symbolism there. And the best Asa and Uru departed in the city of the dragon in Mesopotamia. One was called Sarah, which means the dragon queen. And Abraham takes her to Egypt, where Ra, Ptah, whatever you want to look at it, but Enki falls in love with her, basically, and impregnates her, and so begins the royal bloodline of the Jews. What's interesting is the lengths the rabbi took in their lies to conceal the fact that Sarah's kids, who are Enlil, Yahweh's tribe, the Jews, are in fact literally half-breeds of his hated brother Enki. So the Adonai, the Ptah tribe. And the reason for this is because Enlil had no ability himself to install soul groups, so they had to half-breed. A similar set of lies happens later when Enlil's priests of Amon, which Amen means Enlil if you said it in Christianity, murdered Tut in the tree of the desert while trying to save his father Akhenaten from them. The story of how the lie evolved to change Akhenaten's name to Moses and Tutankhamun's name to Jesus makes fascinating reading. Please pick up the books Out of Egypt and the House of the Messiah. How could 2,000 years of historians lied to you? When Enlil, Yahweh, God, tells you the lie, then the rabbi liars say amen, That's how it goes. And when you really look into it, you can see how obvious this is. Enlil was towing the line of basically trading his house ancestors and keeping the druids paying gold to the bank, basically. They wanted to keep us mining the gold. So it was Enki's agenda. It was slipping in some bird trap DNA, basically his own DNA in the mix. And that was like his bolt in the oven, And even though this was probably a super huge criminal offense against the Orion cultures, but they are the ones that even paid for the expensive trip from Nibiru to here, So The clues that say that he was really doing this was that he had much more cybernetic bloodlines through his mother, and then his way much more than his half brother. So Enki was probably aware of the loss of time travel, basically, and lucid dreaming skills that they lost due to the DNA radiance called the Nephilim and fallen ones. Basically, they didn't have the ability to have out of body experiences and things like that. So the Anunnaki ancestry is universally described biblically and in Sumerian. So you can really look into this if you really look at it from this point of view. Some of the conditions which made the fall in the DNA were probably very familiar to him. He probably knew exactly what happened. And since he was a genetic, master, essentially, and there's a lot of other sources that suggest that there was a rebellion between these Orion telepathic mag mothers, these snake mothers, however you wanted to look at it, this Orion empire. There was a rebellion, and they seen that, and I think Enki was a part of that. And he wanted to be a part of that, and his mother helped him and assisted him in that. As she was a part of it, and she didn't have the fallen DNA yet. She was one of the rare cases that her DNA wasn't fallen, so she had like implosive dragon mother DNA, essentially, as they would call it. But if you look at like a far out enough picture of our galaxy, you can see that there's like a discontinuation in the Orion arm, and there's literally like just the arm was blown off. And it's probably like a discontinuation of the fractation, basically because of this falling away, this war, the Orion War, is like it's a result. It literally blew an arm off of our galaxy. So I imagine some pretty crazy stuff like that. When they said that they seen the arms burning off, or they seen the arms of Orion burning off the galaxy, something like that. There's a quote from one of these older texts that said that, and it kind of really made sense when I heard that. Like, we seen the arms, or we seen the stars burning off the arms of Orion, and da 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 da. It was pretty crazy. But the Draco ancestry, that basically, which basically points that Thoth and Enki's kind of point that comes from Rigel and Orion, were literally like heartbroken that portion of their blood became parasitic, heartbroken in the sense that the telepathic Dracos split, began having like two hearts, basically. Like, they're meant to like try to end the heart field effect, basically trying to end the possibility of true compassion. These cyborgs were splicing their genetics with like machine intelligence and intense telepathic communications with the machines, that individualization and things like that were just non-existent. And compassion was no longer valued or understood, replacing it with telepathy, and created a fierce mechanical survivalism along with these hive minds, and the remnants of their ancestors and everything from that. So Enki and the royal house in Sirius, they were like a galactic rarity that they still had this implosive DNA. And usually these were prevented. They usually had one of the queens marry into the kings and all the royalty, so they had kind of a control grid throughout the way. And when you think about the word Elizabeth, it literally means lizard-born, things like that. And you think about how many Queen Elizabeths and how they're literally just passed the leadership off to the next queen in line through genetics. It's pretty crazy. But they lost the ability to lucid dream, carry long memories through death, time travel without a big heavy metal craft, and basically eventually radiate enough charge to fabricate an immune system for their children. Okay? So that's what the fallen DNA meant. That's what the Nephilim meant. They lost that ability. That's the half of the Anunnaki. It was called the Nephilim. And the other half are just regular Anunnaki, okay? Understand that. This is the politics of the DNA, basically, and Enki brought his family's longevity problems to Earth, Samaria. His genetic engineering exploits in Samaria became like the origin of every religion on Earth. So it'd be impossible to understand the origin of religious mythology without understanding the politics of DNA manipulation, which brought about the Anunnaki exploits. The antics of genetic exploitation we call Adam and Eve or Isis and Osiris, depending on who translates it, is the first successful experiment. One main branch of the genetic line where I wouldn't say the first success, but I would say successful in their eyes because they could control. The children of the serpent was the first ones. That's what they're referred to. And they rebelled, realized they didn't need to be slaves, and they left the Garden of Eden, came back, and they were the serpent depicted attaining Eve in the garden. They came back. These women, they were more in touch with their feminine energies, obviously, so they took to these ideas that they were talking about, these more advanced ideas. The men didn't follow it, but they followed the women because Ugg won smash, and then there you go. That was the idea of Adam and Eve. She bit from the apple of wisdom and truth, knowledge. She actually learned the truth of, what was going on. Basically, kind of wanted to touch on like all that. So like Enki, this one that they call Satan, devil, Beelzebub, all of these bad things, Neptune, Poseidon, whatever you want to look at him as. He was the good guy. He's the one that gave you the ability to have a good life, a future, and start to harmonize with nature. All right, think about it like that. We should harmonize with nature. We should embrace who we are, not follow others. A lot of people are quick to say something's good and something's evil, but in reality, there's much more to it than that. You have, like, for those people, I'd ask, it's bloodshed, violence, killing. Is that evil? Most people would say yes. And for those same people, I'd ask them, would they just have all the predators die off of starvation? And then all the herbivores graze the land dry, overpopulate, and die of famine? Is that like the bloodless utopia you picture? There's balance everywhere in nature. You mean like the lion? When the shepherd pulled the thorn from his paw, he let him go, and then when he seen him again later, he told all the lions, hey, that shepherd pulled a thorn from my paw. And they all stood back in honor and let him eat him instead of them eating him. They know their place in nature, and they don't fight it. Okay. You think about, right, a lot of people believe what I call the lie of strength through tolerance, turning the other cheek. I don't believe there is true strength in tolerance. When you look at nature itself, the struggle, the competition is what ensures that the strong survive, and only the favored genetics pass on. So your creatures, your beings, your species itself exists closer and closer to perfection, striving more and more for perfection. As I said, too much light, you have apathy and stagnation. Too much dark, you have chaos and destruction. You have to find the balance. And when you realize that, you can ask these people that want to argue it and debate it, I mean, with these would these pacifists, you know, realize the difference? Would they curse the social constructs and democracies that offered no protection when invaders burned their homes, you know? If you look at history, like I said 1,000 times, their dead tongues don't speak. So history speaks for itself. You know, there is a balance. We can be peaceful. But to have a peaceful society, you must have a strong, flourishing society that also knows its purpose. I don't think we clawed our way to the top of the food chain to eat, you know, nut tacos and fruits and veggies all the time. I feel that it's a given that we're on the top of the food chain for a reason. It speaks loudly to me, but I don't know, maybe not everybody sees it that way. Like, some of us are shepherds, some of us are sheep, and some of us are wolves, I guess. We all have our part. But yeah, I'm open to discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll be trying to upload more videos. I just been really busy and been trying to figure out something. I had a friend kind of let me down. He made some promises and stuff like that that basically, you know, fell through, and it really messed up my situation for now. So it just been busy trying to kind of recalibrate from that trusting situation. So if any lessons you can learn, don't depend on others. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed all this and the artwork I left there for you guys to see while I blabbled on. Yep, enjoy, and I look forward to the discussion.